reach your dreams.
Ito po si Nelson Galvez na bumabati ng isang magandang umaga sa mga nakikinig sa amin sa Kasalakayan. Ihanda na po ang balak gawin sa umagang ito. Huwag bibitiw, manatiling nakatutok sa Talakayan Radyo Pilipino.
Ito naman si Joe Damasco, taga-balita ng Karatahan, Toronto. Bumabati sa inyo ng magandang umaga sa inyo.
Ako naman po si Karen Pascual Binaday, ang inyong lifestyle editor dito sa Talakayan.
And this is Tony San Juan, your political commentator. Greetings everyone throughout the world. Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, at magandang gabi. At ngayon po ay umpisahan natin ang talakayan. We're going to start with our discussion today, and we have a very, very special guest and very creative, shall we say, personality in the community, and our co-host Karen Pascual Binaday will introduce our guests.
Okay, our guest for today is a multidisciplinary artist and community leader. He's also an actor, writer, designer, producer, and filmmaker. He's currently the artistic producer of the Carlos Bolosan Theater. Please welcome Mr. Leon Alves.
Welcome, Leon. How do you pronounce your Leon or Leon?
It's Leon.
Leon, okay. Sa atin kasi Lion. Leon.
Yeah, that's actually,
Yun na nga.
actually what they would call my grandfather. They would say Leon.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
And you pronounce my last name Orius.
Orius.
Yeah.
Glorious. Okay.
Maraming biscuit yan.
Oreo.
Never, biro lang. I'm just kidding. Oreo yun.
Is that AU? It's A-U-R-E.
Hindi, Oreo nga yun. Marami,
Is
kaya
from Bicol?
Oreos.
Yes, from Bicol.
Nandyan.
Yeah, former mayor of Naga City is Orius.
Yeah, the first mayor after the second, or the World War Second.
Are you related with June? Yes, that's my father. I'm okay. I'm like the third, or like Leon, and then my grandfather was like Leon Orius, like my grandfather in Naga, and then now I have my son. Now Leon Victor.
The fourth.
Yeah.
Fourth.
Yeah, really carry the line. There's so few Leons, so I thought like let's keep spreading like that. So actually, when I go back to Naga City, the first time I went back, I went to a gym in a hotel. I was assigned a hotel. I know not the streets I can live on.
Do you speak Filipino, Leon? Or you understand Filipino?
I understand, and it's strange when I came here. I was totally fluent in Tagalog. Unfortunately, as I grew up here, it was like late 70s, early 80s. So it was really hard for me to retain the language. And I think another thing that I realized was that because at home they were speaking Tagalog, it totally mixed up my it crossed like the wires in my brain, and then I totally lost the ability to speak. I understand it pretty well, but it's something that I really wish, or I'm gonna be trying to learn again. But it's hard to get back. I've been back to the Philippines a couple of times, and when they start speaking really quickly, I'm lost. Hard.
It's nice to be,
But you're more fluent than Bicolano.
Yes,
Oo man.
yeah. Yes. EU man.
Oo man.
Yeah.
Kasi ako Tagalog Bicol.
Yeah.
Oo man. I understand from the biodata sent by Karen here, you got lots of awards, theater, stage, and films, and documentaries, and all those things. How are these things going into your personality and your pride or something? Because you're multi-awarded personality and got lots of things in your hand, in your plate. How is it?
I think it was a good segue there where we reference sort of my background with my grandfather, my Filipino community at that time, or at least the area where we were downtown Toronto, and the school that I went to, there were so few Filipinos, and of course, like as children can often be, there were elements of racism, and there were always people sort of making fun of me because I wasn't, I wasn't part of the mainstream at the time, and there was something that was really as I was growing up, my father always, or my parents always taught me to be proud of being Filipino. They were always telling me about all of the values of where we've come from, and they really would instill that in me. So somehow it stuck. And for me, and being in a community where people would try to bully you, or they try to put you down, and not having so many people to sort of back you up, you really had to find sort of like that strength within yourself, and then really care about your stories. So, and I think there is sort of in my background, there's sort of like that desire to tell stories, to share stories, because my grandfather was also, he started the Bicol Mill in the Philippines. So
Yes.
there's an element of writers.
He's still there.
Yes, yeah.
Bicol Mail is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How is this? I believe your degree is more on sociology, a BA in sociology, something like that. And I understand that you moved from being some sort of an analyst or some
Yes.
sort of a project manager, something. Then you move into theater or stage. How is the transformation, and then helps you right now?
It was it was a very that almost that cliche path, not a cliche path, but that path almost it's a challenge, or it's a path that a lot of immigrant, I think, artists or immigrants face here, where when you first, because your family's trying to settle, and they're trying, their main priority, absolutely so, is their main priority is just putting food on the table and a roof over your head. So you're not able to think so much about more artistic pursuits. So throughout high school and university, I was always interested in the arts, and I actually, it would always, like my path would always veer back towards the arts, as much as I wanted. Like I think my dad was really hoping I'd become a computer analyst like he was, and so in university I started off in economics, because at the time I had a small business, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into business, and I'm going to go into computers. But as the years progressed, I wasn't happy, and ultimately I decided, and it's funny. Ultimately, I ended up first in a consulting firm, because I was still trying to do, I was still trying to follow the path that I think my parents wanted me to have, where it was being just stable, the stability. But ultimately, I was like, I'm not happy doing this, and I really need to do what I believe in, or what I think is going to make an impact in this community, or in the society that I live in now, which is Toronto, which is Canada. So I said, sorry, Dad, and I said, also the boss of like the company, he was the president of like the small consulting firm in Toronto. I just had 2 months of training there, and I was like, I apologize. I just, after like 2 months here in this consulting firm, in this environment where you're working, 10, 12 hours a day, and for what? It wasn't really something that I was really passionate about. So I said to him, I've decided to pursue my career as a writer, as an actor. And I still, as you said, like I had taken English in university. So within those English courses, I was also taking courses that were connected to theater still. So I still always had my foot, in that pond. So it was not, I wasn't going in cold. But after that, when I quit the consulting firm, I took acting classes. I took classes at Second City, and I really sort of jumped into to that path.
Second City, so you must be Joker.
I can be, yeah.
Comedian, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because Second City, they have produced lots of comedians.
Absolutely.
May tatanong ako kayo.
Yes.
Yun. I have watched Carlos Bulosan several times, and I know I saw you there. Do you have plan to go in a movie?
It's in like this generation now. Like I'm artistic producer of like a new group of young actors and young, you know, and in this day and age, their focus, you know, theater is one thing, but they're also so focused in multimedia, right? And things like like on YouTube. So to really get them interested and keep their interest going, we are starting to develop more film and video work as well. So there is that goal. And for me personally, I think that was why I need to sort of go in that direction as well, because I really want to become a filmmaker. And that's why I stepped down from my, I also started another theater company before that called Fujian Asian Canadian Theater Company, which was I co-founded. And that company is one of them right now. It's still doing fantastic work in the Canadian theater community. But personally, I stepped down from there because I still have the desire to also become a filmmaker, because I love film, and that's also another one of my passions. So with CBT, like Carlos Wilson Theater right now, we're really, I'm starting to create a foundation where our artists they're getting well versed not only for the stage, but we have a couple of cameras, and I'm teaching them like we know how to, like, we have video editing suites, and so we're starting that slowly, like because it's also very expensive to, not as expensive like back in, you know, just a decade ago it would have been very expensive to create film, but now that the technology is there, there's an opportunity, and I do believe that. I think in our community we can really tell a lot of great stories on film and
Then,
media.
in case you need casting for the movie at
Extra?
But nagkokong ko extra.
Yeah.
hindi,
Yung pakakain sa buhaya.
Sir Tony saka si Nelson sila yung gaganap ng dulo.
Send me your headshot and bios, please.
Oh, I was just wondering.
Bira, ano man no. Oh, sige na nga. We're gonna stop for a while for take a moment of commercials, please.
Kumusta kabayan? Ito si Rafael Neves, General Manager ng Action Honda. Para makatipid, mapabilis, pagbili ng Honda sasakyan, kami laging may paraan. Laging may sales events at promotion, tama sa iyong kakayahan. Please call us at 416-281-1234, 416-281-1234. Bibili ka o hindi, it's always my pleasure to talk to our kababayan. Mabuhay!
Talakayan, Radyo Pilipino sa PinoyRadio.com.
nakikinig sa Talakayan.
PinoyRadio.com.
This is Tony San Juan, your political commentator. I'll just be reporting on some political developments in the Philippines. There are two mayors right now in the Philippines who are engaged more on, shall we say, promotion or avoidance of something else. We have the Davao Mayor, Vice Mayor Paulo Duterte, who is the presidential son, and according to him, he's retiring from politics in 2019, so he'll not be running for re-election in 2019. Bakit kaya? Because of apparent alleged involvement sa 2.1 billion in shabu smuggling or something else, or he might be preparing for something bigger in the national stage. And the second mayor is Iloilo Mayor, what's his name? Patrick Mabilog, who was dismissed by the ombudsman because of his alleged dishonesty. Not necessarily alleged, but he was found dishonest. And according to reports, he's now in Canada. Kaya maaaring nasa Toronto yun, nagtatago, or we don't know. He was involved sa tinatawag na illegal drug use and distribution. So dalawang mayor involved doon. Ngayon, according to the United States top diplomat, the American ambassador to the Philippines, that the Philippines denied that CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, is backing a plot to oust President Duterte. Yan sabi ng Juan. Pero kasi maraming haka-haka na maaaring yung to destabilize the regime of President Duterte. Totoo, kaya talaga ito. Pero ba naman nagsasabi na walang plot? Ang plot kasi laging kanyan sikreto, di ba? Well, anyway, that's the pronouncement of the U.S. top diplomat. Now, there's another policy also about the comments of policy analyst Jeffrey Ordinal. He said that the Philippines and China must be transparent in their dealings regarding the South China Seas. They want to, because China and the Philippines want to shelve sovereignty issues, in favor and in lieu of joint development in the South China Sea. Kasi marami ng regalo ang China, vapor, armas, maaring some other commodities na maaring kinalilimutan ng ating presidente. So in lieu of that, at kapalit noon, kalimutan na muna yung tinatawag na Spratly Islands, yung ating ibang mga islands natin, Scarborough Shoal, at marami pa. At iba ang patakaran ng ating presidente. Sana naman magbago at maging makabayan siya kung hindi siya talaga makabayan. And then, on the part of the Liberal Party, ang sabi nila moribund na ang Liberal Party because it's not the ruling party. They are being linked to the what we call ang tawag dito, drug dealing or drug, especially in the Western Visayas. But according to Senator Franklin Drilon and the former Interior Secretary Marojas, na yung kanilang accusation nila is another diversionary tactics ng administration to demonize the party. Instead, according to them, the government must focus on resolving the 6.4 billion shabu shipment that has been, came out of the Bureau of Customs. Bakit hindi nila tutukan yung bakit ang kwan dito ang kwan dito, ang kwan nila Liberal Party. At dahil dito, nagagalit ang mga ibang tao na hindi makaduterte, sabihin natin. And the last item that I'd like to report to you is about President Duterte, bukod sa pagmumura, ay sinasabi niya he's denying that he ordered the extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. At pinagmumura niya, hindi niya kailangan ng tulong ng Eastern European countries, even other countries, pero kumukuha naman siya ng assistance, military or otherwise, from Russia, from China, and some other sources. So, pero may kakaroon na naman ng joint military exercise. Saan ba talaga lugar ang ating presidente? Lahat na kakampi siya sa China, sa Russia. Walang direction or something like that.
Sala sa lamig, sala sa init.
Ganun ba yun? Oh, okay. All right. And then they said, kalimutan yung tulong ng Eastern European countries na about 6 billion pesos. Tulong sa Marawi for the rehabilitation of Marawi. Pagka ganon, ayaw niya tanggapin yun. Pero ang gobyerno gagastos ng equivalent 6 billion pesos, okay, sa rehab ng Marawi kasi mga buildings doon nasira, displacement of people. So, malaking dagok ito sa ating budget, di ba? So, ewan ko kung anong pag-iisip nga ang ating presidente. Anong say mo, Ka Nelson?
If there is a strings attached, no, dito sa mga support nila na ibibigay, mahirap naman tanggapin yun, di ba?
Lagi naman may strings siya attached yun eh.
Yes, pero to control
Yeah,
the movement of the government,
yeah.
di ba? Sabihin mo, okay, bibigyan nga kita ng pera, pero ganito, gawin mo.
Okay.
Salungat naman doon sa gusto niyang gawin ng ng pamahalaan, anong gagawin mo?
What about our current here? Would you like to comment on that? Presidente, kailangan tanggapin o hindi dapat tanggapin?
Kailangan ba? Hindi naman eh. Madami naman tayong resources sa Pilipinas, hindi naman natin kailangan, di ba?
Anong resources? Mineral resources, human resources, something
I
like
don't-
that. Wala tayong o marami tayong pera, hindi lang.
Madami tayong pera.
Okay. Meron nga bago na naman development, may kakaroon ng pork. Pork na naman na attachment sa budget. Ay, ikaw, Kadjo.
Alam mo yung galing sa China.
Oh,
Alam mo, ang tagal ko na nakikipag-transact ng business sa mga Chinese.
wow!
Mga
Wow,
Mga-
big time pala itong
oo.
ating kumpanyero.
ang mga Chinese, hindi sila nagbibigay na walang kapalit.
Okay.
Yan, personal man o business. Pag nagbigay sila, kaya nga ang government tanggap ng tanggap. Pero ikaw tanggap ikaw regalo, okay lang yan.
Oh,
Pero
ganun ba?
bukas, ako may lakad, ako may dala-dala, meron akong cargo dating
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Oh.
iba na talaga may experience sa mga ganun, no? Thank you, Joe. That's nice to hear. And then, that's all for now. And then we'll go back to our special guest today, Leon Arias. And Karen, would you like to...
Yeah. Okay, so we earlier touched on Carlos Bolosan Theater. Do you want to give us a bit of background? I mean, I know CBT has been around for a long time. Tell us about it, and how did you start getting involved in it?
Sure. Carlos Bolosan Theater is a Filipino-Canadian theater company that's been in the community for 35 years. And when I say that, it seems surprising that it's been around that long, and because I don't know how many people actually still know that it exists. But it's really served the community for different generations now. It started off as a group, the cultural wing of this group called CAMD, which is the Coalition Against the Marcos Dictatorship. And a lot of their plays in the early years were about, against martial law in the Philippines, and also telling the stories of newcomer immigrants here in Canada. And since then, since like that time in the 1980s, it's evolved. In 2000, it started going towards helping develop professional theater artists as well. And I got involved in around, I'd say, 2003, 2005, around that time, when I was brought on as a co-writer and a writer and as a performer. So I co-wrote a play called People Power, which was about It's a Revolution, It's a One, and I performed in that. And following that play, I co-wrote a play called In the Shadow of Elephants, which was a play about the history of resistance to colonial powers in the Philippines as well. And by that time, 2013, there was a leadership transition, and the company was at risk of maybe closing down because of just like the generational changes and everything. And at that point, I felt I don't want to see this company close. So I took on the artistic producer role, and now we're developing, new works for like the new generation as well. So really, the mandate of this company is supporting Filipino stories, Filipino Canadian stories, and also supporting and developing the artists in our community, which are primarily the writers and the actors. So we have workshops, teaching acting workshops and encouraging actors to develop their skills, and at the same time we have writing workshops as well that we do. Like we have this festival called Tales from the Flip Side, where we allow young writers to, write short plays, 10 to 15 minutes or the beginnings of like a longer piece, and then we present it, and then we have actors come in and do readings of these plays, and then some of them ultimately get developed to larger productions as well. So yeah, like I really feel like it serves a value, obviously, that because I decided to stay on this with this company, but I feel that it serves a valuable purpose in our community because we need to keep telling our stories. We need to keep championing our stories, because if we don't, who's going to care about the Filipino Canadian experience, right? And it's interesting that this company has been around for 35 years, and how many of our plays, or you were asking earlier about film and television productions, how many of those have sort of made an impact that it has like a very strong impact in our community, where Filipino community, but the larger community, like the Canadian community at large, or North American community. One thing for me, one experience that was very meaningful for me was I co-produced a play for the Fringe Festival. A friend of mine, Ince Choi, invited me to, he asked me if I could help him produce his play for the Fringe, and it was a Korean-Canadian play. And I was like, okay, like, I've worked with Ince because he was an actor in one of the plays that I wrote called Banana Boys. But this play, you'll probably recognize the name once I say it. It was Kim's Convenience. And so that Kim's Convenience play was a story about a Korean convenience store owner in Parkdale in Toronto. And the Fringe Festival is a small theater festival, or it's a festival where smaller plays can get their story out. But if you're familiar with that play, it became a big hit at the Fringe, and then it was picked up by the Mervishes. Actually, no, it was the Mervishes wanted to pick it. Like there was a sort of I wouldn't say a bidding war, but there was a competition for the play. It was ultimately picked up by Soul Pepper, and then from Soul Pepper, it went on a cross-country tour, went to the States, and then was picked up by the CBC, and now is a television show. And so what I saw there, almost from the ground level, was the Korean Canadian community came out. Like I would go to the dads, they camp out, or like they'd have like their picnic blankets, and because like you had to line up to get tickets, and they all supported like this story. And for me, it really hit me like right in the heart, where I'm like, oh, I'd love to see something like this for the Filipino Canadian community, right? Because we've been here, like now, like there's several generations now. But primarily the 70s was when like the larger sort of first wave of Filipino immigrants started coming here to Canada, and now we're like the fastest growing community here. And yet our stories and our faces, our voices are not so, you don't necessarily see them in like the Canadian mainstream, right? And what does that mean? And that also goes back to you're asking me about why I decided to ultimately become an actor and a writer. It was also because growing up, I didn't see enough role models or examples of myself on television or on the written page. There weren't enough of these stories for me to sort of, who were my heroes, who were my leaders, right? And for me, for a lot of us growing up, it was Bruce Lee, but he's Chinese, and he's Chinese American. So I crave, or I really hope to continue to develop or inspire like these generations that continue to grow, that continue to be a part of our new home, this North American society, or in Toronto, and really make an impact here, right? Really share our stories. And I think it's starting to happen. Like you're really starting to see it. And then with CBT, one of the things that we did recently is I wrote a children's play called Caldero, and it was inspired by a sort of a story that my grandmother would tell me to make me eat my dinner. She said, like, if you don't eat your dinner, you're gonna be hungry, and your spirit's gonna go wandering in the night and might get caught in the pot. So I used that story, and I wrote a story about a young boy who was ashamed of eating Filipino food at school, and then he would just keep throwing his lunch away, and then ultimately his spirit went into the caldero. It was actually pulled in by these duende spirits, and then his sister has to go back and save him. So I wrote the story, and then we took it to the schools in Toronto. We've taken it probably to about a dozen schools now, and it's amazing because yes, there's a large population of Filipino students there, but at the same time there are also a lot of different other nationalities or just Canadian kids, and they also loved the story, and they loved hearing about or learning about Filipino food, because we reference all the different types of Filipino food, and so you saw this connection that was being made, and you also see what was really, I think, was really powerful there is that kids from all backgrounds are going, oh yeah, Filipino stories, like they're my friends, they're my neighbors, and it's not so foreign, it's not so different, it's just part of growing up here in Canada now, right? And so I hope that that's something that, you know, my nieces and nephews and my son now as well, growing up, they're gonna not have, you know, they're gonna face different challenges, but they're not gonna have the same challenges as I did growing up, where I was always being told, oh, you're different, or you don't really belong, or your food stinks, and or you know, all of these different things that I just really want to continue to be proud of our culture, and to also incorporate it or make it part of what, you know, is Filipino Canadian or Canadian culture as well. Right?
Yeah, Leon, so you have the Carlos Volution Theater, and it's more associated with some sort of Filipino and Filipino Canadians, and some mainstream actors and participants. How is it funded? How does it operate as a theater or something? You have some resources, some capital, say capitalist or financier, something like that.
We do, not enough. It's primarily the arts funders, and so it's you know, the arts councils, Canada Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, and then we also have. We run some charity events that allow us to get some money from there as well. But I really, that's another part of my role as the artistic producer. I'm really trying to raise more funds to create more programs for like the Filipino Canadian artists and our stories. And it was something I was telling Karen earlier prior to the show, where I really need, like, I feel like we need to just encourage more support for like our art and our stories here, and that's, you know, part of what I can continue
on
to
the
do.
average. How many shows do you produce, or do you you know, shall we say, implement, or shall we say, you know, on the average in a year or something?
Yeah, in a year we typically have one large production, which is like, you know, like it's a show that we run for like probably a week or 2 week, like it has a week or 2 week run, and we have it in a theater. And we also have programming, such as a program that one is called Tugsibo, which is an artist workshop that we do in the spring. And then we have some smaller plays, like such as Caldero, which we do, we present at the schools. And those are smaller, you know, like Caldero is a 30 to 45 minute show. And our larger production, the last one we did was called Anak, and we did that one. Anak was actually something that I tried to do something a little different there, was instead of bringing it to a larger theater in Toronto, I actually staged that in Scarborough, and it was in a church in Scarborough, because what I'm trying to do is we're also trying to build like the audience, right? Because the Filipino Canadian, we're still trying to build the Filipino Canadian theater going audience. So just to encourage people to come out and see more theater, because that's not something that we necessarily go to in the Filipino Canadian community.
Okay, so you're targeting elementary schools or including high schools too, and are these public high schools or Catholic high schools or elementary schools?
For Caldero right now, it's primarily like the elementary school, and like we were contacted by the Catholic school board, but we're also starting to expand that to like the other school boards, and I'm still in discussion with those other schools. The thing is that the budget, it's like bringing it in, like the school budget is so like they don't have much budget, and it actually costs me money to bring it into the schools. But I do it at a loss to us, because I want to share it to like to the elementary school students.
Do you have also some sort of touring throughout Canada or something?
Not
like
yet.
that?
We're hoping
Oh.
we were hoping to bring Anak to Edmonton and Winnipeg, but right now it's a matter of resources. I'd love to, but not yet.
Yeah, I was just wondering because this production of Carlos Bulusan, right?
Yes.
When I was still in Manila or in the Philippines, I heard about this production existing in the Philippines. How does it work now that it has also been present in the Canadian society?
In terms of like the stories, or like
No,
what we share.
with respect to existence, right? Is it still currently in the Philippines, or is it now only in Canada?
It's right now. It's currently only in Canada, but since becoming artistic producer, one of my larger goals is I really want to build a bridge to the Philippines, and really bring back, have like an exchange program with like the artists here, who for the most part, a lot of my the artists in the company have grown up here, and they know very little about Filipino culture, or they'd like to know more, learn more.
So, are you saying that the company doesn't exist anymore in the Philippines?
Not this company, not
Carlos
specifically.
Bulusan?
Yeah, like Carlos Bulusan Theater. We don't have anything not that to my knowledge.
Yeah, because I know it started in the Philippines, right?
Oh.
This company started in the Philippines. It used to be some sort of theater.
Okay.
Theater. It was involved in theaters. It was involved in stages, right? So I was just surprised that to find out that it is here in Canada. So I don't know if it was brought here, or is it coexisting in the Philippines too?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was connected to its earlier roots were connected to a lot of like sort of like the activist groups and the activist theater groups there. So I wouldn't be surprised.
It's one of the prestigious company back home,
Oh.
but it was more sort of nationalistic. Same as what you're promoting right now.
Yeah.
Right. It's more on Philippine culture.
Yes. Yeah. It's also possible that it might have been also another company that was inspired and used the Carlos Bulusan name as well.
And yeah, for our listeners, who is Carlos Bulusan?
Carlos Bulusan is a writer and a poet that worked as a migrant worker in America in the 1930s. And during his experience as a migrant worker facing lots of racism, obviously, he was inspired to write poetry and write prose. Like he wrote a novel called America is in the Heart, and the Philippines is in the Heart. And he wrote that to sort of help mobilize like the Filipino workers during that time. And so it's in that spirit that we selected his name as sort of the symbol for our theater company as well.
Are you working on any new plays at the moment?
We are. We have several new plays. One is called that we're actually going to be going into development in conjunction with Tarragon Theater. It's called Our Time of Night. And Our Time of Night is an exploration of the environment right now of extrajudicial killings, and it's sort of trying to it's an observation of like what's happening there I'd say from the viewpoint of, again, like a young Filipino Canadian
But are you
artist.
actually taking a political stand?
I think we're going into development with that right now. So I'm actually he's a younger writer. So I'm talking to him going, we're bringing in, when we start this development process, I am going to bring in different journalists and different researchers to talk about it. So he has a much deeper immersion in what's going on there. So
we'll see. I think he's right now his artist statement is just to like sort of observe what's going on and try to talk about it through his perspective. But we really want to be careful with that as well and make sure that it's not something that we just jump in and not have a more grounded understanding of that. Of, like, the
Okay,
situation.
momentarily we're gonna have a commercial break.
Cool.
Ang tanlaw sa aking mundo.
Hey, we're gonna resume our interview with Leon Arias.
Yeah, so we're running short of time now.
We have enough time. How's that? Oh, yeah, all right, just 3 questions and perhaps I really don't
I'll
know.
talk fast.
Okay. First question: how is it? Do you believe in such thing as an artist or an actor or director is born, or it's developed or made or something like that? And second question: what's actually your advice to the young generation, Filipino Canadians or whoever, in terms of participating in drama and arts and theater work? And yeah. Just
Sure.
2 questions.
Yeah, the first, like, to answer the first one, I feel like you're born with a certain element of a predisposition or like an interest in it, or like there's a love for it. But if you really want to be an artist, if you really want to be a director, you have to develop it. You can't just be born into it. Yeah, like there's on a rare occasion there's some that are geniuses in their specific fields, but for the most part you have to really work and develop and strive and build that experience. And I think that speaks to like that second question, like if for my advice for young artists right now, especially in our community, it's really strive for that artistic discipline, because I know especially in like the Filipino community, like we love performing, we love entertaining. But if you really want to become a professional, you have to put that time in to hone your skills, to hone your craft, and that's like taking courses for it in school and university, or acting classes afterwards, and also keeping a professional discipline, which is like even simple things like being on time, or continuing to like hone your craft, right, and studying like the classics and studying what's happening now and current, and then creating for yourself as well. So yeah, like and especially for Filipino Canadian artists, It's create your work or be more proactive or champion your own destiny, because no one's gonna care about telling a Filipino Canadian story, right? Like you can't expect like a Jewish Canadian guy or a Chinese Canadian guy to write a Filipino Canadian story, right? And want to put a Filipino Canadian face on screen. That's going to be on us to also support and develop ourselves.
So you're into developing artistic talent or creative talents. How do you find, or how do you determine, in essence, whether this guy or that lady or that girl has, so to say, traits or potentials to become a good artist or a good something like that?
Yeah, you can see, like, you really see for the most part, the people who come through our door, they all have talent. They're all very talented. But what I see that the determining factor for me is if they're willing to work hard for it and put the time in it, because I see there's so many people that come through to me and they're like, oh, I want to be an actor, I want to be a writer, and it's like, okay, let's start writing. Let's meet and have like these sessions, and you're supposed to deliver every week like a new draft, and you have to put these hours in. And as an actor, you have to put these hours in like the studio, and we have like workshops to put that time in. And then you see the people who are like, oh, I have this thing and I have that thing, and then they don't attend to it, and that's I think the determining line. You see the people who are committed and are putting the time in, and then they're the ones that are going to really succeed, right? Because if you're just sort of doing it, every once in a while, or only on the weekends, and you're not fully committed to being the top of your game, it's a really hard industry to really succeed in, and you even need an element of luck for the most part as well. But you make your luck by being prepared when that opportunity arrives.
Karen?
Yeah, so tell us about your CBT team right now, and what's your creative process like?
Right now we have a great young new, it's sort of like I call it the next generation of CBT, right? And it begins with there's our artistic associate Belinda Corpus, who she's a musician as well. You might have seen her on different shows as well, and I'm working with her right now to sort of create the succession plan or the future leadership for Carlos Blues Theater. So I'm hoping Belinda will stay on or continue on as to work with me as the continuing leader of CBT. And on top of that, there's some I just mentioned to you on the break about there's Izzy Kanon, who's a fantastic improv and comedic actor, and she's like on the Royal Canadian Air Force on CBC. So she continues to do work with us. Richard Mojica is like the writer for that play I mentioned, Our Time of Night. There's AP Bautista, who is a fantastic musical theater artist. She just did a show. She's just been touring around North America, but when she's come back, I said, okay, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna write a musical, because I know Filipinos love musicals, and we're gonna write a Filipino Canadian musical. So that there's AP Bautista, Alia Rasul's also another comedic actor with a great comedic background. Anthony Raymond Yu, he just produced a play at Hamilton Fringe. So there's a great group of young Filipino Canadian artists, and what our process right now too is very sort of still collective based, where we all sort of create shows, or we develop shows by everyone sharing their stories and sort of finding a storyline from those stories as well. But now I'm also trending towards each of them are being put in charge of their own plays as well. So Richard has Our Time of Night. Belinda is writing that play that I talked to you about called Paper Doll, which is about a young Filipina Canadian coming here to Canada and struggling to fit in, and with social media pressures and the themes of suicide and all that stuff. It's quite heavy. And then with Izzy Kanon, we're trying to do that sketch comedy improv show that I'm talking to maybe a Filipino television channel here that we might produce for the Canadian community as well. So lots of things.
Joe,
keeping busy.
It looked like Leon that the trend now is the new CBC is now different from the old one, because the old one is more on political, and now it's more on the young generation. What's going on? What's the trend going on?
That's true. There is a slight shift, although as like the artistic producer, I still really want to, my core for the mandate is telling stories that have meaning and impact, right? And so we're not even like that musical that I mentioned. There's still gonna have like a cultural or impactful meaning, or sort of telling the stories of like the immigrant story, or like the story of, like the struggles within our community. So yes, we're not so fully politically based. However, like our time of night is political, but even something like Paper Doll, it still has. As the artistic producer, I'm making sure that our stories are not just purely entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Where it's not just dancing and singing and fun romance comedy kind of, which is fine. There's totally room for that. But CBT plays are still always gonna have cultural impact and meaning. If that means anything.
Karen, will you have your final statement or final question? Because
Well, just I wanted to ask Leon if anybody's interested out there to be a part of Carlos Bulosan Theater. How do they go about doing that?
There's so many on Facebook. We're on Facebook, Carlos Bulosan Theater. You can just look that up, and also we have a website called carlosbulosan.com and CARLOSBULOSAN.com. So those are the two places.
Would you like to have your final word, something, inviting our listeners and our watchers to about your own upcoming plays or theater, and how do we get in touch with you?
For sure, yeah. I really do encourage. Like I hope what I'm trying to do as an artist is start bridging, continuing to bridge and build our community. So I know oftentimes like there's different reasons why you're like, oh, I don't want to go to this play because like that guy on the radio right now can't even speak Tagalog. Why do I want to go see? He sounds like a freaking white Canadian guy. But it's like, I think it's still trying to support our stories, right? And like, so we have things that are happening in Tarragon. You'll see on our website very soon.
Okay.
So.
Joe, would you like to say goodbye for now?
Looking forward, Leon, yung new, that's the new CBC.
Thank you.
I've been watching the old one, but that's the old one, and we're getting old already.
Meron pang old at saka new. O sige, paalam na po tayo.
Hindi, ang isang sinasabi ni Joe, huwag mo kakalimutan pag kailangan ninyo ng extra.
Okay. Paalam na, Joe.
At sa ating mga tagapakinig, lalo na sa gitnang kanluran ng GTA, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Okay, umaga pa ngayon at Nelson, our major coordinator.
Yes, ang Toronto Syndicated Network ay nagpapasalamat sa mga nakikinig sa amin for the past 13 years. Kayo po naging silbi, naging inspirasyon ng Talakayan Radio Pilipino.
Okay, and Karen?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank Leon for coming out today, and thank you for talking about Carlos Bulosan Theater. And sa ating mga tagapakinig, maraming salamat sa inyong patuloy na pagsubaybay. Ang bigat na naman.
Yeah.
Sa Talakayan.
Okay, and this is Tony San Juan signing off. At si Kajes, ang ating producer. Palakas ka, Kajes. At nasa St. John's Rehabilitation Center siya ngayon. At maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, he will be joining us. Thank you very much, Leon Arias. Maray na pakikipanayam sa iyo. And goodbye for now.
The hours fade, the moments fly, and time never stands still. We now look into the pool of memories and pause a while in pious meditation to think of the things we did and did not do, but should have done, and hope that in tomorrow we shall improve upon today. Good day, pleasant weekend, Diyos mabulos sa indong gabos.
Inyong natungayan ang isa na namang pagtatanghal na ang programang Talakayan, Radyo Pilipino. Hanggang sa susunod na Sabado para sa mga usaping napapanahon at mga ulat na dapat bigyan.